Chapter 3. Misa sat alone in her room, surrounded by towering stacks of books. The high ceilings were decorated in filigree and carvings. Wooden griffins were forever caught in flight within an elegant border. An eclectic array of objects, unusual pieces of furniture, and the occasional bits of food cluttered the chamber. Some of her possessions were from Centernia, and some were from Earth. One advantage to not having parents was that no one ever told you to clean your room. Misa set down her sewing needle, her notes carefully encased between two pieces of tapestry fabric. If something went wrong, she at least would be comforted that all of her work would be safe. Not that her own room wasn't safe, but there were different levels of safe. As much as she hoped opening the gate would bring good things, there was a chance it would go horribly wrong. In Misa's 21 years of life experience, horribly wrong was very normal. Gate magic was like fabric to Misa. Each strand had a certain color, frequency, and sound. You could push and pull the threads to achieve a desired effect. Years ago, the threads had been tied into a giant knot, but the knot wasn't random. It was a configuration of energy that seemed to call to Misa's soul. And Misa had finally figured out the pattern. She picked up her rolled siren herbs, inhaled deeply, and tapped the ash into a tray. The girl looked to Franklin, a grayed stuffed Easter chick sewed back together more times than Misa could count. "Taryn is right. It's a bad habit," she said. "After I open this gate, I'm kicking it. I swear." The floppy bird looked at her with unmoving plastic eyes. It rocked from side to side, then flopped over. A blue Feltrani cat emerged from behind it, curious. It flapped its green wings and stepped delicately over the plush toy from Earth. "I don't have anything for you," Misa told the cat. "Go kill a rat." Misa inhaled deeply, enjoying the rich cinnamon aroma of her smoke. She had laced it with a bit of elven weed. It helped her focus. The Feltrani climbed onto the arm of her chair, sinking its claws into the fabric. Taryn hated the feral little cats that roamed the castle, claiming they were just as destructive as the rats and termites. Misa liked them. They reminded her of their mother. She had been a beast speaker mage, always surrounded by an entourage of creatures. Misa grimaced as the weed in her mouth developed a charred taste. She shoved the last bit into the ashtray. The metal plate adorned with palm trees was a souvenir from a place called Florida. Misa had never been to Florida. It was a faraway dream world that her mother talked about. There was a castle in Florida that was pretend. So odd to think they would make a castle monument that wasn't real. Florida wasn't real, not to most Centernians. Yet here was a plate with letters stamped into the ceramic, written in the American English script that very few could read. Misa could feel the drugs tugging at her eyes. As she pushed away the feeling, she righted the plush toy the Feltrani had knocked over. "Are you ready to go back to your proper owner?" she asked the stuffed bird. Jessica reflected on her school day as she stared out the bus window and listened to the usual commentary. "Hey, I got a new joke for you. Yo mama's so fat she has more rolls than a bakery." Jessica had failed a history test. "Hey, Fugly, I'm talking to you." Forgotten her lunch. Hey, Fugly!" and found out that no one in the orchestra was honest. Jessica stared at the green leather seat back, ignoring the jeers. "Yo mama's so stupid she got hit by a parked car." Brian's pale face glared at her from the gap between the seat and the window. He was a blond boy who always seemed to have new sneakers to brag about, and nothing kind to say. Jessica pressed her face against the cool glass of the window. The rain poured down, turning the world a muddy gray. The school bus smelled of wet clothing and diesel. The rain ran down the glass in rivers. The bus came to a slow stop as Jessica grabbed her backpack and shuffled down the steps. The bus doors closed behind her, and the bus pulled away with a familiar squeak, hiss, and cloud of exhaust. Jessica shuffled her way up the driveway, walking around the puddles that formed in the cracked asphalt. The rain soaked her hair as she trudged on. She fumbled with her keys and opened the door. Immediately, the warmth of cinnamon tickled her nose. She kicked off her shoes, stepping into the pale green interior. "Mom," she called out, walking forward timidly. "Mom, A black-haired girl sat on the orange kitchen countertop, grinning. The stranger wore tall boots, a crimson tunic that seemed to come from a Renaissance fair, and a black jacket that would have made Lee swoon. "Hello, Jessica." Jessica glanced around wildly. Her mom wasn't home. "Who are you?" "Your cousin, Misa." "I have no cousins." Jessica slowly lowered her backpack to the stained linoleum. "Well, that is certainly untrue," the girl replied. "Where's my mom?" "I don't know." The stranger continued to smile, exuding confidence and calm. "How'd you get in?" Jessica glanced around. The windows were closed, and she was certain she had just unlocked the front door. "The gate in the basement." "What gate?" Again, Jessica looked around, completely baffled. Every logical part of her being told her to turn around and run. "Why, the gate, of course. The only one for miles connected to Centernia," Misa replied. "I brought back something for you. I thought there was a chance you might have forgotten some things." Then the black-haired girl reached into a burlap bag and pulled out a battered stuffed animal. It looked like a chick, sewn together, its wing half shorn off. "Franklin?" Jessica hadn't seen the toy in years. Her hand sunk into the old plush. On the tag, someone had written Jess in a blue ballpoint pen. "Where did you get this?" Jessica asked. "I lost it in the park." "That wasn't a park, Jessica," Misa said. "What do you remember?" Jessica struggled to pull the memory forward. "I lost Franklin because I bumped my head on a ladder," Jessica said. "I ran because it hurt, and I dropped Franklin along the way." "Anything else?" Misa asked. Jessica shook her head. "Do you remember why you have that tattoo on your right shoulder?" "I have no tattoo." Jessica took another step back. "My mom does, but I don't." "It is the mark of Aurumice," Misa explained. "No, it's a big ugly orange flower with too many petals," Jessica countered. Misa cocked her head sideways. "How do you not have a castle mark?" Jessica shook her head. She had no tattoo. However, she had a rough patch of scar tissue. Her mother said she was stung by a bee and the wound got infected. "Can you leave before my mom comes home?" Jessica was unsure what else to say. Again, she wanted to run, but the strange older girl seemed harmless. "Perhaps we should wait for your mother. Or how about I take you back to Castle Aurumice while we wait?" Jessica finally took a step back, wondering if she could outrun the older girl. Fine. I'll just go back to Aurumice and wait by myself." Misa grabbed her burlap bag. Her face crumpled. Tears streamed down Misa's tanned face. She opened the door to the basement and ran down the old wooden steps. "Where are you going?" Jessica pulled out her cell phone and texted her mom. "Do I have a cousin named Misa? She's in our house. What should I do?" Jessica waited for a moment, peering into the basement, listening. The only sound she could hear was Misa crying. Slowly, Jessica walked down the stairs, rationalizing that serial killers were never women. Misa stood in the musty basement between two towers of boxes. "You don't believe me, so I will show you." The girl grabbed her by the wrist, and Jessica realized Misa's tears were fake. She shoved her into the cement wall. Instead of crashing face first into concrete, Jessica fell through the cinder blocks. Jessica had no ears to hear, no eyes to see, and no mouth to scream. She floundered around in black nothingness, and she wondered if she had indeed slammed against the concrete. She tried to wake, but it was the most disorienting place she had ever been. Am I dead? A universe of regret washed over her. Why did she follow the strange girl into the basement? Would her parents know what happened to her? Where was she? All at once, the swallowing nothingness was gone, and Jessica fell forward and slammed into dirt and hay. She laid still, her fingers digging into the soft ground, afraid that reality would vanish again. Opening and closing her hand, she had never felt so grateful to touch the dirt. Jessica found herself alone in a small empty barn storeroom. There was a ladder leading up to sunlight. Jessica slowly stood, relieved to find all her limbs in place. "Misa?" she called out. She glanced behind. There was no trace of her suburban basement cement, only a dark wooden wall. Jessica listened carefully, hearing a strange and beautiful bird song. There were 2 exits to the storeroom. One was a ladder, and the other was a door, small and wooden. She opted for the ladder, climbing up the splintering wood. She thought she was dreaming, but knew better. As Jessica rounded the top of the ladder, she realized she had been below ground. The air was hot and musty, and the small barn was uncomfortably warm. There were various tools scattered about and ropes hanging from the walls. The barn door was open in the sunlight, and Jessica felt herself compelled to go forward, trembling in fear. Jessica stepped out of the barn, and the blast of summer assaulted her senses. She was in a large stable yard filled with barns and fenced-in areas. The vegetation was thick and overgrown, and the paddocks were home to a few farm animals. The creatures were strange: golden cows, colorful horses with 2 horns, little fat hippopotamuses with shells on their backs, and small cats with wings. "I'm going crazy," Jessica murmured to herself. As bizarre as the barnyard appeared, there was a part of her mind that knew it was familiar. A tiny green dragon sat on a fence post. It made eye contact with Jessica, then squawked, flapping away. It flew towards a gigantic structure that loomed above the stable yard. The palace had arched stained-glass windows and tall spires that stretched upward, each one shimmering in the sunlight and piercing the sky like the horn of a unicorn. "Castle Aurumice," Jessica murmured, her memory serving the ancient name. Vines encased the structure, thick and thorny. Roses and other flowers wove through the wild foliage, adding to the massive palace's beauty. The gigantic citadel seemed to have been grown, not built. The stony walls were white, tinted in fluid shades of green and violet. It was as if the forest spirit herself was reaching out to protect the structure. Jessica never thought a building could grip her heart with its grandeur. Castle Aurumice was more than a structure. It was like nothing on earth, more holy than any temple ever built. The citadel pulsed with an ancient life of its own. "You do remember," Misa appeared beside her, and Jessica jumped despite herself. "I don't know how," Jessica whispered. Her heart was pounding. "But I know Aurumice." A strange calmness overwhelmed her. Jessica could have evaporated into the summer and be lost in the enigmatic world forever. And that was okay. Her eyes continued to trace the castle. "Misa, why?" Jessica struggled with the words. "Who built something so amazing?" Her cousin grinned. "Castle Aurumice wasn't built. It was grown thousands of years ago by the mage Greenbrier. She's a powerful spirit, still here, bound in the veins of the castle." Misa's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's what you feel. All castle folk are tied to her. I knew you hadn't forgotten." Jessica could not stop staring at the palace. Misa quickly grew impatient and tugged on her cousin's arm. "Follow me. You need to meet 2 people," Misa said. "Or rather become reacquainted with them." Jessica wrenched her hand away, returning to her senses. "Wait," she said. "You already got your way and pushed me into this place. You need to answer a few questions before I follow you anywhere. First of all, how did I get here?" Misa smiled. "Glad my little cousin is a fire dove. You traveled, dear, through a gate." "Where did the gate come from?" "It's always been there. Your mother and another mage locked it a decade ago. It took me a while to unlock it." Misa smiled. Jessica pulled her cell phone from her pocket. The phone worked, but it had no signal. She hoped her message went through before she crossed the gate. "How do I go home?" Jessica asked. "I'll show you," Misa said. "You can leave at any time, no worries. You're not trapped here. Quite the contrary. For many years, you were trapped there." "Am I your hostage?" Jessica swallowed hard. Misa laughed so genuinely. No, of course not. You're my family. Follow me. You need to talk to my brother."